Let us look at Nigerian political landscape, especially as it has to do with the northern hegemony already being threatened. Because the way it is already evident that the North is not able to control the man Tinubu. Of course, one of the major reasons they are looking beyond Tinubu in 2027. Quite agreed, the policies of the government, so many areas, is not working, or rather hardship that come with it have not been addressed. But it's turning out that the major reason they are looking beyond Tinubu is because the way they control a Jonathan, of course, the way they control an Obasanjo, it's turning out that the North is not able to control the man Tinubu. Because currently, we are seeing serious move to draft a Jonathan into the contest. Of course, there are so many news out there that suggest this. Let me quickly say that because Anobi have made it very clear that he's a man that will be, he's going to be a man of his own, because from all indication, it appears as though the plan of the North, particularly the Fulanis who are driving this coalition, is to ensure that Anobi deputize Atiku. But it turns out that Obi is becoming stubborn. Obi is not likely going to play into their game. Because if you look at what Obi is saying here, he said, if making, because already Obi is already been accused of why making promise of one term of 4 years. Obi is now saying, if making such a promise qualifies me for Socratic evaluation, Mr. Obi said, then we may as well question the mental fitness of those who frame our constitution, which clearly stipulates a 4-year renewable tenure. So, though Obi have made it abundantly clear that if elected, he's not going to stay any day beyond 4 years. I think the North have seen that Obi is not ready to play their game. Of course, let us look at areas where it's becoming very clear that a Jonathan is already being considered and drafted into this. Because even Jerry Ghana himself the other day was quoted to have said that, of course, beyond Obi, in consideration for PDP candidates, that they have other candidates, where he was saying that the South have so many qualified candidates. Of course, let us look at this one coming from Obedient. He said coalition, Obedient movement, Rise Obi, alleged marginalization in ADC. So you can clearly see that Obi himself, of course, the way his followers are going about it, the North is no longer comfortable. I think that explains the reason they are now looking beyond Obi and they are trying to see whether they could zero in on the former president talking about Goodluck Jonathan. But let me say that the way and manner the North, despite Jonathan in the past, the way and manner they control his government, maybe that's the reason they are equally looking towards him, because this is their hegemony that is already threatened. This is their subjugation of the South that they are no longer having power to do. I think that is the reason, the major reason, particularly the elites in the North. I think that is the major reason they are looking beyond, of course, the man Tinubu. Okay, let us look at news concerning drafting Jonathan into all of this. This one is saying, Northern allies initiate plan, move to draft Jonathan into 2027 presidential race. Of course, we know that going by the constitution of Nigeria, Jonathan have done only one term, meaning he can as well do another term. Maybe that is why the North is looking at that. This one is saying 2027, Jonathan, not Obi, is not best choice. This one is coming from PDP chieftain as well. And you can understand that all these are strategies from the northern elements to ensure that they get power back, as they are not always comfortable each time they are not in power. But the question is, must they not be always in power? The North should realize that, of course, it doesn't matter the opinion, it doesn't matter what they think, that they must allow South to do their uninterrupted 8 years. Of course, the same thing Muhammad Buhari did. So it appears as though the North have actually made their match. when I met their match, do not forget that during the time of Muhammadu Buhari, there was so much issue of marginalization against the South, lopsided appointment that favored the North. And remember that each time Nigerians, particularly Southerners, raised issue of marginalization, the government of Muhammadu Buhari then was always quick to say the people being appointed are competent. Now, they are crying. We have seen the lives of, the lives of former governor of Kano State, Kwankwanso, raising serious issue the other day. Of course, at the event where Senate Committee on Constitutional Review visited his state to get the input of people from his state, talking about, in his own consideration, that the South is benefiting from Tinubu's government at the expense of the North. You begin to wonder, even the Buhari's government that did all manner of things that cannot be justified. So, for instance, under Muhammadu Buhari, we had a situation where the government of Buhari spent 1.98 billion US dollar, which is equivalent to 2.9 trillion naira, talking about the money expended on the Kano Niger rail project. We begin to wonder of what economic benefit is that to Nigeria. And this is without recourse to the feelings of Nigerians, without recourse to the wealth of Nigerians, whether the people are suffering or not. So I think the North should be wary of how they complain, because they should realize that even if Buhari took us back more than 20 years than he met the country. And if you look at even the amount his government spent on fixing refineries, I'm talking about 4 refineries, which today, none of them is working, and the government even carrying with the idea of seeing whether they can sell them or not. We are talking about a whopping sum of 29 trillion naira that a Buhari government spent, not just spent, wasted. Because as we speak, the refineries, none of them is working. Even all the promises, even the initial, of course, takeoff of refining, all is to no avail. Because as it stands, none of them is working, and there's no hope of any of them coming back on stream. So the North should take note. Then, equally note with serious concern how a Buhari's government borrowed 30 trillion naira from CBN through ways and means. And in all of the borrowing, the government of Buhari breached the ESA laws. Because what the law says is that though the government have right to borrow through that window, it must not be more than 5% of your annual budget. And if you borrow in a particular year, you have not been able to repay it, you are not permitted by law to borrow for another preceding year. But all of this, the government of Muhammadu Buhari borrowed severally and breached all the ESTA's laws. Nobody questioned it. So you begin to wonder how the Buhari himself ran Nigerian government. Let us equally look at the inability of the government to even address our healthcare sector. A situation that made Nigerians, including the government itself, Buhari himself and his cabinet members, to spend well over 3.6 billion US dollar, which is equivalent to 5.5 trillion naira in overseas medical. Meaning the 8 years of Buhari, Nigerians, including those in government, spend 5.5 trillion naira in going overseas for treatment. And at the end of the day, the former president himself equally gave up the ghost in a UK hospital. Of course, the most expensive health facility in the United Kingdom. So I think it is becoming very clear that the reason the North do not want a Tinubu currently is because they have lost control of controlling the leadership. They have lost control of subjugating leadership in Nigeria. That northern hegemony that controls the power at the center, I think they have lost grip on it. Because Tinubu have proven that he's a man of his own, that he takes responsibility, that the buck rests with him. I think that will explain the reason the North is actually very brutal, very angry, and want power by all means. I'm not saying the government have done everything right. I'm not saying Nigerians are not suffering. But consider the fact that Nigeria have an unwritten agreement, a tacit one, that says if SARS stay for 8 years, they do not have to stay for 8 years. We saw Ebuari 8 years, and it's expected that a Santana will stay for 8 years. Now, an Obi, who of course, for obvious reasons, the people are yearning for, particularly the youths. The North is already looking beyond Obi, because an Obi have come out to make it very clear currently that he is not going to deputize an Atiku. So they have not seen that Obi have reason to be a man of his own. That Obi is not going to allow himself to be subjugated. Obi is not going to allow himself to be controlled by that same northern hegemony. They are now looking beyond Obi. They now want to zero in on the man, Jonathan, whom of course, during his tenure, they totally subjugated his leadership. That northern hegemony actually controlled his leadership. Because then, we could clearly see that Jonathan did not make any meaningful impact in terms of developmental projects in the southern part of the country. Even in Otueke, where he come from, there is no good road in that place under his watch. And we could clearly see him during his time trying to build evangelist schools, trying to give so many projects to the North, though he was trying to be a nationalist. But however, the North was comfortable because he was like a tool in the hand of the northern hegemony, in the hand of those few who subjugate power in the North. But I think, like I said, they have made their match currently in the person of Senator Amebola Tinubu, who of course is now beating them in their game. Because when it comes to the issue of lopsided appointment that they are now accusing the president of doing, the former president of Muhammadu Buhari started it and elevated it to a very high level, to the point that he even accused the Igbos that they gave him 5% vote and that they will receive 5% attention. And that is what he demonstrated in all his 8 years. At the point, he even told them that they are like a dot in a nation. That is why I even challenged the man to himself, that if the North is too stubborn, that he should use his office to ensure that he, of course, make sure that we restructure this country to the extent that they know that they will lose all those areas they have, all those areas that they have undue advantage. Come to think of it, the North is actually benefiting at the expense of the South. Because if you look at the mainstay of Nigerian economy, is crude. And crude is domiciled in the South. How can a place like Kano be having for the four local governments? You have a place like Jigawa that is covered out of Kano State having 27 local governments. You are talking about 77 or so. And the place like Lagos that is more populated is just having 25 as recognized by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And when you share positions in terms of representation in the National Assembly, in terms of revenue based on local government, a Kano State, Jigawa State will get more than states where you are producing getting these resources. If not for even 30% derivative that is making the oil producing states have any other thing except what is being shared among everybody, it means the northern states will get more revenue than even places where this oil is domiciled. Of course, we know the hazard associated with oil exploration. We can even remember what is happening in Ogoni today. Ogoni is perhaps the most polluted place in the whole world. Even all the promises of Muhammadu Buhari to clean up Ogoni, it ended up in politics. Little do we know that he was playing politics when he started the process of cleaning up Ogoni. So the point is, the North must realize that it is 8 years, straight 8 years for the South. It doesn't matter the opinion. They must learn to tolerate the South, because the South tolerated them for good 8 years. So if they are tired of the man, Jagaban, we have another alternative in the person of P2B, who has promised that he's only going to spend 4 years and that he's not ready to deputize an Atiku. If the intention is to ensure that they force an Obi to deputize Atiku, it should be done on them currently that Obi is very clear. Obi has made it abundantly clear that he's not ready to deputize an Atiku, that is a man of his own, that he wants to run and govern the country and take responsibility for the period for which he's elected. So it is irrespective of anybody's opinion, the North must realize that it is the turn of the South, and that this subjugation must come to an end. Because if you look at the issue of Fulani militias in Nigeria, you understand that it is part of the strategy of those who subjugate us to use the Fulani to further subjugate us. Because if you listen to the retired military intelligence officer recently, who made it very clear that the intention of those who sponsor terrorism is to ultimately Islamize Nigeria. And since he made that statement, nobody have come out to even say what he's saying is wrong. Even both those in government, those who have said the government in the past, those who have accused in the past of such. So from what we are seeing, it is very clear that the North is not comfortable with the man Tinubu because he's a man of his own. And they should realize that the buck rests with him and he have reason to take charge. I must say very big thank you for your time. This is Mr.